Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng Peng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can also find my work on Twitter at Sheng_Peng, also on Blue Sky soon, I promise, and at NBC Sharks.
And I'm Keegan McNally. You can find me on Twitter at half_hockey, my website half-hockey.com, or at San Jose Hockey Now. I've gotten many requests to join Blue Sky. I'm going to look at it. Not that I got burned, but I'd started a Threads when Threads was going to be the new.
Oh, I did too, yeah.
And then nothing ever happened, and I still have that Threads with no posts on it. So that's more on me than anything else. But that's my only hesitation is I have to wait and see, make sure that it's going to stick around before we sign up and all that stuff.
I need something that posts simultaneously. I'm not going to post on two different places at two different times. I'm not.
He's a busy man. Yeah, that's the other bit is like we've started to get like a following on Twitter from our respective accounts. Like you obviously have a very big following, so it's tough in this political climate to start over, I guess is what. But anyway, we'll see. Anyway, that's not what we're here for today. We're here on this glorious Tuesday to celebrate a Sharks win recently, as well as to talk about some news the past week. We're going to speak about the Sharks' recent play and the aforementioned win, go line by line and just kind of our thoughts on some players. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit of a broader topic of what we think has gone right so far in the rebuild and what are some things to try and look out for as we go forward in this rebuild. So why don't we start with some news of the week, just because that'll get it out of the way early. Biggest one being the Yaroslav Askarov call-up.
Yeah, he has arrived.
It's officially Askarov season, sure.
But we're not sure for how long, though. My understanding is that the Vanecek injury, I don't think it's expected to be very long term. That's at least what I heard today, Tuesday. So we'll see how long it's for. I'm not exactly sure in terms of who traveled on this road trip yet, and we'll find that out tomorrow. This short Dallas St. Louis swing, but I would say though that it's a pretty good chance that Askarov does get a game in here on this road trip. It kind of makes sense.
Yep.
Even just precautionary with Vanecek. There's no need to rush anything. So we'll have to see on that part of it. But of course, it's also very exciting to see Askarov, the future of Sharks goaltending. We got to talk about that another episode. What the Sharks do next year with their goaltending, and do you stick with Blackwood, or do you go with Vanecek, and do you try to trade Blackwood? But let's hold on that. Let's not.
Yeah, he's got to play a game first.
Multiple episodes into one, so
he's got to play a game first. He's looked amazing at the Barracuda. It's exciting to see him in San Jose. But Blackwood's been playing very well recently. I think last game was a little, the couple goals there that maybe you don't want to give up, but he got the win and he had some big saves. Every single game he's got big saves and great numbers. So yeah, I'm excited for an Askarov game. But Blackwood's been doing well. So I would imagine that they're going to give him a game. And it makes sense. And we can all be excited then.
Yeah, we'll see, but makes sense, yeah.
Our only other actual personnel news, I guess, is that Sturm has been injured for a few games now. Do we have any update on his injury or what it's considered?
Yeah, it should be short-term, too. He got injured in the New York game. He got kind of tangled up there. You can see it on the replay. I think it was in the second period. So I believe that one is upper body, and we will see. He's an important part of the team. But I will say, though, and we're going to get into this, that the team has played quite well, though, in his absence. So when he comes back, actually, I could see the way that, at least the way they play against Detroit, that he could be an odd man out, which is a surprise, because that's not a place that Nico has found himself. But that also is a marker of how the Sharks have improved in the last over the summer.
Yeah, it seems like maybe they'll just kind of, if the good times are rolling, keep them together until one of them starts to kind of stick out and not do so well, and then maybe he gets back in, or who knows how long the injury's there for. But you're right. Last game, it seemed like we're gonna This is a good segue. Man, we're rolling with these segues today. It seemed like all 4 lines were kind of rolling, and you mentioned that this was the first game this year where all 4 lines scored, right? So it's different than we've seen in the past couple games. So yeah, it's just been a little bit of a fresh air. I remember looking at my television and seeing Wenberg and Toffoli on a line. And I was like, "Oh, that's the first line." And then I was like, "No, that's the third line. What? that doesn't make sense for the Sharks." But
Yeah, I think one thing we can go, I guess, headline overall is before we start talking about each each line quickly, or a note about each line, or notes about each line, is that if you look at the time on ice in the Detroit game, it's actually really interesting. I think that Granlund was at like 1831, Celebrini was like at 1830, and Wenberg was at like 1820. So basically all the same. The Pittsburgh game, I think Granlund was like in 22 minutes, maybe it was 20, and then Wenberg was right around there too, very close. And then actually Celebrini was technically the third line center. He was at 19 minutes. And so there's sort of a 3 kind of dangerous balanced lines. I know that they aren't perfect lines.
yeah,
Like in a perfect world, is Mikhail Granlund your 1C, or Wenberg, or even Celebrini at this point? No. In a perfect world, is Goodrow the ideal winger and I think he's a good winger for Smith and Celebrini, but is he the ideal winger for Smith and Celebrini? No, he's not the ideal winger. But nonetheless, though, it's 3 lines that have been dangerous in 2 games here.
Yeah, let's start with the Lund line, the reunification of the Lund line, which has happened earlier this season. It's kind of stuck around for a little while. Eklund, Granlund, and Zetterlund.
Basically happened since our last podcast. I guess before we get into it, our last podcast was, I think, before the East Coast road trip. So we have about 5 games since then. And that's when they put that line back together.
Yeah. And also, I just want a quick shout out that one of Eklund's best games this year. He's had a few good games this year, but this last game was stellar, right? Like inches away from a hat trick, and just like hounding pucks and always in the right place and shooting, which, Eklund has been developing a shot. And yeah, I think it's good to see just a little bit more of that shoot first mentality from Eklund.
I like that from Eklund. I asked him about it, and the numbers don't bear it out. So maybe it's more perception as opposed to reality. Perception of him scoring from a bad angle, and that looks like he's kind of shooting from everywhere. But there's also a couple times though where he took in previous games on this road trip that he was taking shots that I wouldn't necessarily typically think that he might take, because they weren't necessarily from the best shooting areas. But I like that mentality of not always looking for that perfect play, because I think that there have been times this season that Eklund has fallen into that trap kind of. And I think this is before he got sent to the 4th line. And since the East Coast road trip, that you can argue that he has been the Sharks' best player, maybe. I don't know, but he's been up there. He's been one of the Sharks' best players. Looking back at the games, the Pittsburgh game, I don't remember him being particularly strong, but the New Jersey game, he was very good. The Philadelphia game, he was good. So there's definitely, and also, like, obviously you mentioned Detroit, there's obviously been a surge in his play. And I think with him, I like that. I like when he shoots, even though they're bad angle shots.
Yeah. A little more confident and as well. And there were times there, and I remember you mentioned it, that we wanted to see more from Eklund, and yeah, he's responded, and that line has looked just like it did last year, good.
But better.
But better. Yeah, even Zetterlund's looked good, a little more productive this year so far, at least. Granlund, obviously, still being Granlund, driving offense from his line on the power play. So, yeah, like suddenly the Sharks just have found, I won't call it depth, but it's like pseudo depth, some sort of balance in their lineup, which is good.
This is right now a better 3 lines than the Sharks have run
in a while.
Maybe in 5 years, to be honest.
It's been a while,
and that's not saying a lot, because the Sharks have been terrible for 5 years and missed the playoffs in every single year. So,
I mean, how many games do we really have like Hurdle and Granlund together?
Right,
Not a
right.
lot.
Last
Yeah.
year, not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be, and you haven't had a score of Toffoli's caliber on the Sharks in a really long. Well, it's since Timo Meyer, I guess. And
Sure.
that's the last guy. But yeah, there's not a lot of times though that you would see a Timo Meyer
Mm-hmm.
on the Sharks third line because it just if I remember back then the third line was like Bonino, Nieto, and
Mm.
who is the third guy? Oh, Cogliano.
Cagliano. That's right.
Right. So a decent NHL, actually a very good NHL third line in 2016,
Yeah.
but not in 2022. So it might I guess
You could look
that's
back.
my bold declaration that these might be the most balanced group of Sharks lines in
Hmm.
the last 5 years, and this doesn't include Nico Sturm too, which
I guess there were
we'll
probably
get to
some,
the fourth line in a second. But
yeah, probably some games in there we had both Couture and Hurdle. Were pretty good, I imagine.
well, last year
But
he had Couture for 6 games, but
I know.
Couture wasn't. He didn't look like Couture last year, even in those six
Yeah.
games he played. So even though the record was okay, so up
Yeah.
the middle, the best three centers that the Sharks have had, they had for a little while. They had Granlund, Hurdle, and Sturm. Right,
Yeah.
Sturm was playing third line center last year because Couture was out. Years past, if you're just looking down the middle, Nick Bonino was your 3C, and unfortunately, with Nick, the Sharks got him at the end of his career. With the Sharks had him in 2016
He's
when they
better.
played the
Yeah.
Penguins in the final. They might have beat the Penguins in the final if they had
Yeah.
Bonino as their 3C, but they didn't. Pittsburgh did. So I don't know.
It's been a while.
I'm digging hard because I've been complaining about the Sharks 3C problems for the last 5 years. I of course remember 2021 when they tried to foist Noel Gregor as a 3C to start a season, and when that
Mm-hmm.
didn't work, they went to Dylan Gambrell. In 2019-20, it was Joe Thornton, but it was really Joe Thornton at
Very
the
end. Yeah.
sharp drop of his career point,
Yeah.
basically from 2019-20 on. He wasn't the Joe Thornton of before, not even a facsimile of that Joe Thornton.
Yeah.
So Wenberg as your 3C he's a good 3C. Maybe he's not a great 3C, but he's a good 3C though.
I think so.
So I think that
I
he's
mean,
my
at least for center depth, yeah. I think before we started selling off like our really good wingers, and obviously we had Kane for a while, and Meyer and Hurdle and Couture. I think that those top four maybe
The
are a
problem
little
with Kane
better.
and Meyer, though, is that when Kane was in the lineup and playing
Yeah,
well, he was the MVP of that 2021 season. But Myers hadn't found his game.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
Meyer was in the kind of in the woods for a couple of years there, where people were like, "Oh my God,
What
they
is
signed
Timo
him
Meyer
to
doing?
4
Yeah,
years, $24 million deal, a $24 million deal, and he's barely a 20-goal winger."
no,
So in theory, though Vander Kane in his prime and Timo Meyer coming up, that should be and Kevin LeBanc. That was the plan. That was the Doug Wilson plan, right? But at that exact moment, though, Timo Meyer was actually pretty terrible in those couple of years. In the 2019, I'm really dredging up a lot of
yeah. You're
scar
really
tissue here, guys. I apologize for that. But 2019,
reminding
20,
some bad
2020,
Sharks teams.
21, Timo Meyer was not good. And Kevin LeBanc was just okay. He wasn't good, but he was just okay. And Evander was actually really good. He was the Sharks' arguably the best player. But it wasn't like all three of those guys are going, or at least two of the three. If you had Evander and Timo Meyer going, then the Sharks would have been a lot more competitive. But the Sharks never really got that except for the 2018-19 season when they had everyone going. But
Yeah,
that was the last great Sharks team. So actually, yeah, I would push back on that part too, because you had to name people in Kane and Meyer, but they weren't performing at the same time though.
yeah. And it is also helpful that this top nine also features an 18-year-old, a 19-year-old, a 22-year-old, and a 24-year-old. How old is Zetterlund now? 25, 24?
He's 25, but it's more a matter of them being good. It doesn't matter about the age, just that
Well, it
Celebrini
matters
is
in
really
some ways
good.
that it's like, yeah, it matters because like this is the future, and it's like with the
Oh, okay.
Kane and everybody else, it was like
Fair. Okay.
you kind of saw an end date in terms of their effectiveness, at least in
Sure.
some ways. And that's my bigger point is like this is a
Okay.
better seems like a better lineup with younger guys at this moment.
Sure, it's a more exciting lineup in that sense, but I think it's
Sure.
also better. I'm just coming up with this now. This isn't the point of
Yeah.
this episode, but I am pretty sure these lines are. It's not saying a lot. It's still not
Yeah.
a playoff. Probably still not a playoff caliber for
Yeah.
lines, but maybe it is if the defense is better. Maybe I don't know, but I actually think these might be the best four lines that I've
It's
watched.
certainly better.
It's this is very very tragic. Yeah, thinking about just all the all the ways that they try to they try to sell us on this or that
Didn't work.
player, and those
Yeah.
players were not working or were far or they were right. Like Doug Wilson was right about Timo Meyer. Timo Meyer is an amazing player. It's just that for whatever reason, for those couple of years after he signed his contract, he just wasn't good.
Mm. Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway,
Yeah. Well, all of those terrible years landed us where we are today.
exactly.
So let's start with. So we talked about the Lund line a little bit.
Mhm.
Granlund's been great. Zetterlund's been good. Eklund's been improving.
I
I
think you
don't
need a little
believe.
more out of Zetterlund right now because I
Mhm.
love Zetterlund in that Utah game. Like, if I were
Yeah.
Zetterlund, I would just watch that game every game. Like that's how you want Zetterlund to play every game as close as
Sure.
possible. And I don't get that quite enough from him, I would say.
Sure.
But still, though, yeah, overall that line has been good. It's I guess a testament to good chemistry.
Yeah.
Guys that know each other know where each other will be.
And you just stick the guys that have a similar sounding last name together, and it'll work fine.
Exactly.
Um, the next biggest thing, and the thing that kind of was a little bit of the talk of the week, was the Will Smith to the wing of Celebrini with Barkley Goodrow.
Names that are all different. Will, Macklin, Barkley.
That's why you know that that line's not going to work out.
If someone had told you that would be a Sharks line like 10 years ago,
Hmm.
guys with the first name of Will, Macklin, and Barkley.
Yeah. Well, we'd recognize the
Barkley spelled
Goodrow
like
bit, right?
Barclay.
We'd recognize the Goodrow probably. I think he was
Oh
around.
yeah, he might have just signed with the Sharks, right? From
um,
North Bay.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think the biggest thing with the Celebrini-Smith and Goodrow line is that it just felt it kind of felt like watching a lower level of hockey almost, where I've seen Celebrini and Smith dominate, and then watching them together on the same line do it at the NHL level was just super gratifying, I guess. It was a good way to put it. And it's like you see this like the very beginning of this like what could grow into a good pairing or a good duo,
Mhm.
I guess. Even if it's not what we expected right away, because Will Smith's projected as a center long term and everything, but I think Will Smith needs something like that. He needed a guy that's got that kind of skill to help his game come along, and he's been playing better, it seems like. So,
Yeah, I didn't mind putting Will back with Cunning and Goodrow while they were doing it because I thought he got better because when they started off, it was really rough in beginning of season when he was I think
sure.
it was Zetterlin and I don't think that he was quite ready. I think it was Costin and Zetterlin for a couple of games there. I
Mm,
think that was tough on him because I think it was too much of a load for him.
sure.
Uh, he wasn't getting maybe enough help, and it's not to put it on his wingers either because it's NHL. They shouldn't be needing to caddy along a young player like Will. But I think though that it has been a good fit that with Celebrini that they they seem to kind of know it's very new in their chemistry, just 2 games in, but they kind of seem to know where each other are and what they want to do.
Hmm.
And I think you mentioned that Will obviously plays off of his college line mates, right? Ryan Leonard and Perot. That's very important to him, and he's kind of playing off of Celebrini that way. They seem very very close to a lot of chances there. And so yeah, I think it's been good. I want to add too about Goodrow that a lot of people don't like a draw on that line. And like I
Mm.
mentioned, yeah, of course you rather have what have you Miko ranting in on that line, or even if you don't are not talking about a 40 goal guy, even a guy who can do dirty work like Tom Wilson without
Sure.
the dirtiness. Of course, you love to have a guy like that on that line instead. But Goodrow is still a good player. I was talking with somebody, a scout, and he said that yeah, he thinks that Goodrow has slowed down a little bit. This isn't quite the Goodrow of 3 years ago
Hmm.
when he was still in Tampa, or maybe his first year in New York, but he is still a good player, and he's still a helpful part to that line. Someone to help do the dirty work, someone to help be defensively responsible. And I think that he hasn't been bad on that line at all. He's been, again, these four lines that the Sharks are running are some of the more balanced I've seen from them in a long time, and Gaudreau is a part of it.
Yeah, you need somebody who's going to do the Ryan Leonard work of that line, and um, that's yeah. You would hope that somebody who has a little bit more offensive punch than Goodrow does right now in his current state. But I think if you need a forechecker and you need somebody who's going to get the puck off the boards and you need somebody who's going to play defense, it's probably going to be Goodrow that's going to do it for the Sharks right now. So
Yeah.
he hasn't been awful either. I don't think he's stuck out like he's not losing pucks every minute and obviously like slowing the line down. He's doing what he needs to do to make the line succeed. It's just
Yeah, he's turned over a couple pucks here and there. Okay, that
sure.
happens, but he's also won a lot of forecheck battles,
Mm-hmm.
and he's won them the puck. He's got them the puck. He's been a useful player on the cycle when they're cycling around too. He's had good chances too, and he's never going to score a lot of points. And his time on a line like this is likely to be more on the shorter term.
Sure.
But who else are you going to put out there too? I think that's a question that whenever fans want to replace a Cunnin or a Goodrow or Ferraro or Ruda, and you throw in people like you just throw up like Jack Thompson, right? Like there's a lot of incompleteness of
Sure.
a guy's game like that you don't throw him in there, or even your favorite Gushin, right? Are you really going to put Gushin on a line with two rookies like that? That
Probably not.
probably is not a great idea at the AHL level, even though Gushin has the skill to play with those guys. But is he filling out the other areas of the game that Smith and Celebrini are more raw in? He's not.
Mm-hmm.
And so far I think it's been a good mixture.
Yeah, I think a guy like Delandrio would be an interesting attempt up there with them, but
Sure.
he's already playing well on the line that he's playing on.
Right.
So, and that's our next line to.
Right.
Although congratulations to Macklin on winning the game in overtime. That was one of the most exciting, I think, wins in a long time for the Sharks. And yeah, I actually listening to Randy call that game, I could tell just in his voice how excited he was about that winner. So I was like, yeah, it feels good. And he's the third youngest NHL player to score a game-winning goal in overtime. So
Yeah. I just did a story with Jack Hahn, too, friend of the show, kind of breaking down that goal. And one of the things he
mm-hmm.
mentioned was just Macklin's decisiveness,
Mm-hmm.
and that a lot of times in the way to score in the NHL is you need to just deceive the defense and goaltending into what you're doing. And most players in Macklin's situation at that time,
Mm-hmm.
coming down the slot, they're just looking for the best shot. They're not necessarily looking to deceive the goalie. I think actually, and you guys know I'm a big fan of his, but Luke Cunnin, right? Like Luke Cunnin gets a ton of chances, right? But Luke is not the most deceptive player. Luke
Yeah.
is often just going to fire it, look for just he's trying to get the best shot off kind of a lot of times, right? He doesn't have that ability to
Mm-hmm.
play that fast with the puck, right? Most players don't.
Yep.
And so I think that's a good sort of example of what most players would do in that situation, as opposed to what a special player like Macklin Celebrini will do. And we saw that in a story with that Jack helped out on, that Macklin kind of feinted to
Yep.
his left and then he pulled it in tight, and then Jack Hahn said that most shooters in that position are going to try to go glove on the goalie there. That's probably what Talbot was thinking.
Yep.
But the second that Talbot moved his glove, then Macklin went for underneath
Yeah.
and went low, and it snuck through. And that's a great example of just being able to do all that at top speed is something that, and not give away what he's trying to do to the goalie. That is a special player trait, an elite player trait, a true goal scorer's trait.
A couple things with that too. It's another example of he's playing so fast that even he bobbles the puck there, and then it goes off the defender's stick, and he recovers it faster than the defender can recover or bat it away or do
Right.
anything. So just the speed there is, impressive. And then like that shot, was it Toffoli? Somebody mentioned I think somebody mentioned about somebody shooting he never shoots for the corners. He's never
Oh,
shooting
yeah,
for the
that's
top
in
of the
my
net.
story too. Yeah, thank you
Yeah,
for
that
reading
was
it.
yeah,
So Nico Sturm was saying
that
that
was it.
about Toffoli. He noticed the first
Yep.
time he practiced with Toffoli in a captain skate, he noticed that Toffoli doesn't shoot for the corners in practice. Doesn't try to shoot bar down. Most guys are trying to go for that shot. And I asked Tyler why that was the case, and Tyler said that's actually something that he learned from Luke Robitaille.
That's
Luke
it. Luke
Robitaille,
Robitaille.
600 plus goals.
Yeah.
And Luke told him that you're not going to get a chance to, in a game, everything's going so fast. You're not going to get a chance to get that perfect shot off. You just gotta find a hole in the goalie. And so, yeah, I don't know if Macklin took from Toffoli there, but that
No,
is
it's
an
just that
example of
that's
not.
that's
Yeah,
that space between the glove and the pad is like the goal scorer's place, right?
yeah,
That's the area where it's like if you could see it, it's there. It's and you hit that shot, and you also gather rebounds from there as well as don't lose possession as often
right.
as like shooting for the corner. So it's
Right,
like
shooting high,
that's
and how many times have we seen
yeah,
you shoot high, you miss, it goes off the glass, and then it leads to a
yep,
counterattack the other way. If you shoot toward the edges like the Foley does a lot, you're never,
yep,
never. It's almost never going to turn to a counterattack.
yeah. So it's a really good place to shoot it in overtime, and it's something that he's a smart guy. That's Celebrini, smart guy. Because it's also one of my favorite players, and yours too. Matvei Michkov scored an overtime winning goal like a week ago, where he shoots it from a bad angle, and he's shooting. He actually shoots it kind of similar in spots of where he shot it, but it was a bad angle shot that if he misses that net, it's going the other way, and there's a chance for the opposing team. He didn't. He made scored the goal instead, but just an interesting thing. I think Celebrini's got a lot of detail to his game in terms of not wanting to turn the puck over like that. So, all right, third line, Wenberg and Toffoli, looked good. I mean, you pair a good playmaker with a good shooter. Tale as old as time, I think, maybe, right?
Right. And one thing I want to mention too is I thought Dellandrea in Pittsburgh, I wrote about that this was one of the best bottom six performances by a Sharks player that I've seen in years, maybe. Maybe I'm exaggerating because I think that 2022-23, the Sharks were actually decent. I think they were really hamstrung by bad goaltending that year. But definitely last year, the Sharks did not get good bottom
Sure.
six performances, except for maybe Nico Sturm sometimes, because their bottom six was a lot of times those guys like Zadina and Hoffman, just guys that just,
There.
again, I always say this, that if they're not scoring, they're not helping you guys.
Sure.
And so you have a guy like Dellandrea was such a winning so many battles, making life hell for Erik Karlsson in Pittsburgh, winning the puck, distributing it to the higher skilled players on his line. Everything you want for a complementary player on a skill line. And I think that applies to a Goodrow too. That's why guys like that are useful on a line. A lot of times you see when a coach puts together a line, it's like, oh, why didn't you put Toffoli with Smith and Celebrini? It's not a matter of always just putting your most skilled players together. I mean, yeah, sometimes you can do that and that works, but you got to find a mixture of styles, just different kinds of mixes, right? So if you put Toffoli with Smith and Celebrini, not saying that can't work, But then what happens? Then all of a sudden your third line is much weaker. Right now, your third line is back to Wenberg, Cunnin, or Wenberg, Dellandrea, and Goodrow then. And so you lose that balance, right? And so that's, I think when you put together a line, it's there's a lot can go into it, and a lot more than just put your best, most skilled, most offensive players together. So anyway, I think the Dellandrea game against Pittsburgh was a good example of what a player like that can do for a skill line. And then the other bit about Wenberg and Toffoli, yeah, like definitely the Sharks have not had if you even want to call them a third line, because I told you about the ice time that they've been playing, you can argue that the third line is Celebrini and Goodrow and Smith, or even, maybe not the Lund line, because Granlund, I think, is kind of the by a nose, but he's still the clear 1C of this team. But anyway, though, you can make an argument, though, for all those lines as maybe being your second or third line, right? And definitely on a third line, I have not seen a Sharks third line since 2018-19, where you had that much talent on a third line, even if it's unrefined, even if your third line is Celebrini-Smith and Goodrow. And obviously Celebrini and Smith, and especially Smith, they're not quite refined yet. That still though, that's still the kind of the most dangerous kind of valid third line that I've seen in years from the Sharks.
I love it. And Dellandrea is kind of, not that he's separated himself, but at least somewhat separated himself from at least the rotating cast of possible fourth liners. I think he's kind of really solidified himself in the lineup as a guy that's going to stick around no matter where he's
game like that against Pittsburgh, definitely. Like I think like any of these guys, there's got to be about consistency
for sure. Yeah.
Right? Otherwise, they would be like every day in the lineup, no questions asked. But I think he has separated himself. I think though Grundstrom is a guy that's going to sneak in there. He's going to get his chance. I know he's a guy that in training camp I liked and I thought might get a look with Celebrini and Toffoli like on a more permanent basis. I think that can still happen.
Yeah, and I've liked flashes of Grundstrom too. That's our fourth line is what was it? Grundstrom, Costin, and
Cunnin at center.
And Cunnin at center. Yep. And Cunnin scores a fantastic goal in the last game.
Great play by Grundstrom.
Yeah, excellent play. And then watching that game, obviously, is like he scored that one for Sheng. I was like, that was a ripper, and that was a.
You don't have to subtweet me. You can just add me.
I will. Well, I think it's funnier when
I guess
I don't. Yeah. Like if I don't add you,
and then somehow I see it. I guess it just in my feed. So
yeah, exactly. It's funnier that way. I thought about adding you to it, but I didn't. But yeah, and I think we should mention that Costin looked better, right?
Costin looked good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that I don't know if I would say I'm tough on him. Like I recognize how much talent he has. I think that's part of it. I think there's no reason that I see that he should not be in a playoff caliber AHL lineup every night. Just the ability that he has. And I'm also very, I guess, candid about what I think undoes his ability to play up or play every night. And I don't know if that's just something that he's just gonna have to deal with like for the rest of his career, or hopefully he'll get better. But you saw in Pittsburgh and against Detroit, just dudes bouncing off of him in a slot while he has the puck, able to play fast. I was looking at that fourth line at times, and they were good on the rush. When's the last time a Sharks fourth line was good on the rush? And that's
True.
Not just Costin, that's also Cunnin, and that's also Grundstrom. And that's a kind of I got to give him credit. I mean, he sat out for 8 games. They could have waived him in that time, and I don't think anybody would have batted an eye, and no one would have picked him up probably too. But as we have recognized too with him too, that I think we've been fair about it, that he has a lot of talent, and so we're seeing more of that talent the last 2 games, more of the good and less of the bad for sure.
And it helps. It if he's this not he's not like amazing, but if it balances the line so much better if you have a guy like Hostin who's able to contribute offensively in the bottom six,
Right.
and they needed that for sure.
Right. Right. That blend of size and skill, just the Sharks
Yeah,
don't have that throughout the lineup. And so I think that's of course why they tried him out at first. I mean, this is
yeah, they gave him a
that was the
lot.
vision why they tried him out with Celebrini and Toffoli at the beginning of camp, because that was the vision and that's the ability that he really does have.
Yeah. So we'll see. It has to be consistent. He's got to
Right.
keep it up, and then we have to see what happens when Sturm comes back as well. Because it's a lot of. It's hard to see some of these guys getting pulled out. Like Cunnen's not sitting out. Goodrow's not for a long period of time. Like it's kind of. Costin is the odd man out, so he has to keep earning his way in the lineup. Just like
If Sturm were to come back, he's not going to be. Sturm is on IR, but if Sturm was
yeah,
to come back tomorrow for Dallas, I think he sits. What
probably
That
does.
was probably the most complete Sharks game. And I was really impressed by what they did in the third period too. That how many times have we got to a third period with the Sharks that they played okay, maybe they played even with the other team, and then the other team just turns it on and blows them away, because that's what teams do to the Sharks. When they want to turn it on, they could, right? And so Sharks have not been able to summon that. We just need this one great period to win this game. And they did, even though they gave it up at the end. They were great on 5-on-5. That was a power play goal.
Yep.
But they were great on 5-on-5, and they should have won that game in regulation. They were better in the first two periods also, but in the third period they were phenomenal. And there hasn't been a lot of cases in the past couple of years where the Sharks have been that good in sort of the decisive period, the period for all the marbles. They are usually outplayed badly in those periods, and so I was really impressed by that total effort from every line.
And we're gonna speak briefly about it when we talk about the rebuilds. But man, Detroit now 7-9-2 in the what is it, year 20 of the Yzer plan. I'm kidding. That's
As one scout mentioned to me, if it wasn't Steve Eisman running that team, that he'd be canned already. So
yeah, that's another deep dive we should do. We get comparisons a lot with like Anaheim and Chicago, which we're going to speak about Chicago this podcast. But yeah, Detroit is an interesting comparison for a rebuild as well. Because man, I don't know, they just seem, and obviously they're running like it's not complete, right? But it seemed like they were a little bit mentally fragile in that game to a team like the Sharks, who are not known for making teams appear mentally fragile.
right.
Which is strange to see. Or the Sharks are that good. Who knows? All right, next we're going to talk about the defense. Ferraro and Liljegren. It's been great seeing a guy like Liljegren. He's not like putting up tons of points, but being able to move pucks really effectively, and I think it's helping. Whoever he's paired with, Ferraro as well, just it's helping. We said that many weeks ago, right? Like Ferraro needed a puck mover, and I think it helps.
Right, and I think it helps Ruda too. And I think Liljegren, I think there's still a lot to work with in terms of he's still youngish, so he can be better defensively. But when he's on, though, yeah, he can move the puck like no other, at least on this Sharks team. And so there's that consistency bit with him, though, that I think is a bit of an issue. But regardless, though, all that said, though, that I think he definitely has been an upgrade on what they had.
Sure.
And I think he definitely has helped Ferraro out, too. I don't think there's any question about that.
Got his first Sharks goal on a very fluky bounce. Love that goal. One of those ones you get like an NHL 24 or whatever, where it's like, oh, come on, really? That's the one? Yeah, I love that goal. You want a little more offense, I think, but he is. He's looked. I think more points will come if he's playing the way that he is right
I'm not worried about the points, really. I think that he would be more valuable if I think he. I don't maybe understand defense well enough, but I feel like he still has things to learn how to play defensively. And maybe his concentration more was on the offensive side throughout his career, so he didn't learn to play it as well as he could. But there's definitely potential there, though. And like I said, he moves the puck great, and he is defensively he's not weak. He's
Yeah.
not being battered out there. He skates. He's obviously a tremendous skater too,
Great skater.
which
Yeah.
is a big part of it. I think that if we look back at say last year, right, like a guy like Kalen Addison who moved the puck brilliantly too at times, but he just didn't move as well, even if he was willing and he had a nastiness to his game, but he just didn't move well enough to be a top four AHL defender. And
Mhm.
Liljegren definitely does. And so if you can kind of harness it and improve it, kind of like I think actually like a guy like Jake Wallman's a good example of a guy that has become a more valid defender and with excellent tools, but great skater and has become a better defensive player. And so Liljegren maybe can follow that path, perhaps.
And that's a good segue to Wallman as well. He returned from his injury. What I liked about Wallman is, and what I like, what separates Wallman from a lot of the defenders that the Sharks have is just he's quick to activate, right? Like he
Mhm.
goes down low a lot more frequently than any of the other Sharks defenders, and he's willing to pull off like dekes and moves to try and um, be more of that offensive leaning defenseman that the Sharks just don't have. And I saw it during the Detroit game, and I was like, oh, great, we have he's back. You know, like it just felt good to have him back. I think,
Well,
and
he's such a
obviously,
good skater. I think
yeah.
that's the big part of it, right? And obviously Liljegren too is an excellent skater too. And so I think that definitely without Wallman in the lineup and before they picked up Liljegren, that the Sharks defense was definitely lacking mobility.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Ferraro is very mobile, but besides that, Ruda isn't the quickest. Thrun is
Yeah.
okay, but I wouldn't say that Thrun you would call him the
Yeah.
in the anywhere close in the class of a Wallman or a Liljegren in skating, and so I think that's a big part of too of adding those two specifically that have helped the blue line as compared to last year.
Yeah, for sure. And Thrun and Ruta, um, better Thrun.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that he's not reached a point where he is like a everyday NHL defenseman on every team in the league. That's what he's trying to get to.
Mm-hmm.
But he's definitely better than he was last year. I think that just slowly but surely, right? Like there's no great area with him, and that's what we always talk about with Henry. And that's what I talk with scouts about him. Like, what is he? Who,
Who
what
is
is he as
Thrun?
a defenseman?
What is
And
Thrun?
yeah, and I that's I think a fair question, but I think I see a lot of improvements in a lot of areas, right? Because he is sort of a jack of all trades kind of guy, like maybe okay or good in a lot of areas and not great in any specific area. But if he gets good in enough areas, that becomes a very useful defenseman. You don't have to be, I would say, really definable to be a useful defenseman. So I guess, defend him that way. That if you are a good puck mover, are reasonably strong. His size, he's tall enough. So if you're reasonably strong, if you skate good and not great, you have good hockey sense, maybe not great hockey sense, that you can still be a very useful defenseman, even a bordering top four, maybe bottom six guy. But so I think I'm encouraged by what I've seen. I've seen at least enough improvement that I wouldn't write him off yet. I know that some fans may have because he didn't blow up the way that I think people were hoping for when the Sharks traded for him. But I think that realistically, he was never going to be a high end guy.
Yeah.
That again, that middle pairing was his very best ceiling, but maybe he is more of a bottom pairing guy, but he can be a good bottom pairing guy too. And so we'll see where he kind of ends up, but I see a better player than last year, and of course it's also helped by a better team around him. But I see a better player than last year for sure.
Yeah. I think it's a good summary of Thrun for right now.
Yeah, and
And defenders take a while as well.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. Let's give him specific play to give him credit on too. The Macklin Celebrini goal against Minnesota, the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, maybe we mentioned it last
I think we
episode,
did.
but
Yeah.
oh, we did. Okay, but yeah, but there's other plays too. Just like that's not the only, I'm not just citing that play because that
Yeah.
play worked. There's actually a lot of just sneaky kind of his puck moving. I think has taken a noticeable improvement, and not to say that he's a great puck mover yet, but it's gone from like bad, Like Sharks bad. Like everybody was kind of bad at it last year too. Like, okay, decent. So he's making a lot more plays than last year for sure, though.
Yeah. And then there's Jan. I don't know. I think Jan is okay, I guess. Oh, so we didn't even mention CC. I think CC has been better than okay. I think he's been good. I mean, not good, but like you most of the time you're not noticing anything bad that CC's doing, and I think that's what you need for the Sharks right now. Like he's playing
Right.
he's eating a lot of minutes and not being a negative. Like in terms of not plus minus. I mean like a negative on the ice in general.
Right. But even Ruda too, I think he has strengths too. You just need to kind of cater
Yeah,
around it. Like Ferraro and Ruda was really not a great idea together.
yeah,
And but if you put Ruda with a more mobile guy, and basically Ruda I think is good along the walls, good in battles. So if you kind of keep him more
yep.
around there, and you don't put too much puck moving stress on his plate. And Thrun may not be like the ideal guy next to him, but he's a better fit than Ferraro for sure. I think
Mm-hmm.
that you get a better you get a better performance, and also too Ruda being in your bottom pairing is probably more where he should be. That's where he was in his best days.
Yep.
And so I don't really have again the what are your options, right? And I still we don't have to, or a lot of people may disagree, but I think that Jack Thompson has a lot to work on defensively, and I did a story about that a while ago. And things that Ruda actually doesn't have a problem with. You don't see Ruda have problems so much in net front. You don't see Ruda have problems along the walls, right? And obviously, you do see Ruda have problems moving the puck and things like that, and with mobility. But yeah, I don't really have too much of an issue with him.
Yeah, I think he's going to be here until maybe a team wants him at the deadline, but I don't know, maybe not.
I think a team might. He's expiring. He's a little expensive. He is expensive for a guy that's probably bottom pairing. So got a nice
Mm-hmm.
contract from the Penguins. Actually, that contract of his is the last one.
Mm-hmm.
But since he's expiring, I can see it. Maybe,
Maybe.
yeah. But I think in general though, with all these players though, yeah, before we move on to talking about the rebuild and what's
Mm-hmm.
going right and what's going wrong with it too, but I was speaking with a NHL coach, and this was his quote, and I think this is this is exactly what Mike Ritter was trying to do, and what he didn't do last year necessarily, but he did do this year, to give him credit for it this year. And the quote is, the Sharks have many more NHL players than last year. They aren't necessarily good NHL players, but they're solid,
Mm-hmm.
and they have all NHL players in their lineup right now, which again we could not say last year. But I think that just look at yesterday's lineup. They're Every guy basically is an NHL player
Mm-hmm.
and like belongs in the NHL, even if they're kind of playing a little above their heads. Like I think most of these guys are going to be guys who are be just for example. I think most of these guys are going to be guys who are going to be in the league next year,
Yeah,
as I guess a basic way to
most.
define it. Maybe Costin won't be. We'll see if he can be consistent.
Yep.
But besides
Ruda,
that,
if he like slows down a
Ruda,
lot.
yeah, I mean Ruda has been slowing down, so maybe Ruda won't be. But I
That's
think
probably
otherwise, though,
it.
yeah, otherwise, yeah, like CC Wallman, Liljegren, Ferraro. You can argue about how good they are or how high their ceilings are, but they're all legitimate Angel defensemen. I think Thrun is getting there, and Thrun's young, and he is getting better at least.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I think
Yeah,
that's
like
that's a good
we
point.
should
So
we should do like a little thought experiment about the guys that are no longer like Kalen Addison's no longer in the
well,
NHL,
yeah,
right?
no, there's so many names. I mean, if you want
Like
to
Zadina's no
dig
longer.
through
Um,
the dregs of last
Hoffman.
year, Zadina, Hoffman, Addison, Ryan Carpenter, hardworking guy, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
his
probably towards
best
the
days were
end.
probably a couple of years ago, right? Justin Bailey,
Studnicka, I don't think is.
Nika's not even close. He's in Ontario.
Yep.
Actually, the guy who survived, the credit to him is Kevin Labanc. Kevin Labanc's
Yeah.
doing some good ththings
The
in
banker.
Columbus, right? Showing his what he's good at with the offensive side.
Yeah.
But besides that, right, and that was basically a typical Sharks lineup last year. Like half the team were not NHL players,
Yeah. There's probably
right?
more that we're not even thinking of, right? But
Right,
there's,
maybe.
yeah.
Maybe. I mean, yeah, your NHL players last year were Granlund, Sturm, Zetterlund, I guess Eklund too, um,
Ferraro.
Ruda, Ferraro. I'm really searching here, guys.
I know. That's what I'm
So
trying to think. Like, yeah. Justin Bailey, yep, he's on the NHL right
right,
now.
right. No, I mentioned Bailey already. Yeah.
Yeah, Barabanov's not in the NHL.
Barabanov turns out that he's he had been
Mm-hmm.
good obviously, but yeah, he wasn't last year, and so yeah, like maybe more
McDonald.
than half. Yeah, McDonald.
Literally so many guys.
Megan McDonald hype train, but yeah, he wasn't
Ohutiuk
necessarily.
played 43 games. He's no longer in the
He never
NHL.
belonged in NHL, to be honest.
Man, this is actually pretty rough. This is an interesting thought experiment. You're right, because like now it's like this coach was saying, like all of these guys, we can see them in some sort of role somewhere next year.
Right,
And
right. Yeah, basically all of them. So basically, you've gone from a team of 9 NHL players last year at best to a team of 18 every
jeez,
night.
yeah,
And you've also upped your ceiling too, because you have guys like Macklin in there, right? Obviously, super gifted player like Macklin. So it's no wonder why the Sharks are, even when they're losing games, right? And let's give credit there too that they started off season 1-7-2, the first 10 games. They're now 5-3-2 the last 10. But it wasn't even when they were 1-7-2, you saw a better team already. It hadn't resulted in wins. And now we see it's actually resulting in wins in the last 10. And you see that the team is way better constructed than last year.
Speaking of
Way
better
better
constructed,
constructed.
speaking of better constructed, what's been going right in this whole rebuild? I wonder. We should talk about it.
Yes.
Starting with the front and center game-winning overtime winner, Macklin Celebrini. You have something written in here that says "desire to win" in parentheses, and I'm curious what you mean by that. Tell me about.
Well, I just think that's something that we heard about Macklin from the beginning, and it's maybe not been obvious so far, but I think it will become more obvious over the years. That's what I hear about him behind the scenes, just that desire to win, a champion's desire to win, and that's going to be something that's going to carry the Sharks to greater heights, to have your best player, your top center. He also is a driver of culture. And so I haven't seen anything to dispute that so far. In training camp, we saw stories of just how long he would stay on the ice and stuff like that. So that's just a start to it. And you figure as he becomes more comfortable and he gets older and more comfortable with the leadership mantle, that we'll see even more of that. And I think it's always interesting because there's a lot of lip service paid to it, and so you never know the guys who are genuine or not at it. Because if you put a camera, if you put a microphone in their face, they're always going to say the right thing, usually,
Mm-hmm.
most of the time. But everything I understand about Macklin is that he is him. He is that guy. And so what's going right with the rebuild? Well, that's
Front and center.
as we said from the moment the Sharks won a draft lottery, that everything made a lot more sense. And nobody is criticizing the Sharks rebuild anymore because yeah, it was luck, but they got the right guy for it.
And shout out to Jason Demers, who recently went on a podcast and said that he would rather have Celebrini than Bedard in terms of this starting a team, which is an interesting discussion. I think they're going to be compared forever, just like Crosby and Ovechkin are compared forever, just like, McDavid and Eichel are compared forever. Guys that are chosen very closely in draft classes that are, generational, for lack of a better term, superstars. They're compared forever. So I think Celebrini and Bedard we're starting up that comparison. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is a fair question. I think we've always talked about Celebrini as being in that mode of Bergeron and Kopitar and that sort of player, right? Taves. And I think that there is always that valid argument. Like, would you rather have a Jonathan Taves in his prime than say Austin Matthews? Obviously, Austin Matthews is more Connor Bedard. Well, based on playoff results and not putting it all on Matthews, but
yeah,
I think that there's an argument for a player that maybe scores a little bit less, but is better in other areas of the game. Barkov, another example too.
yeah, Barkov versus I don't know. I still think
Wasn't he the
McDavid's.
same draft as what was Barkov's draft? I forget.
um,
Was it
20,
Matthews' draft? It wasn't, right?
2014, I think,
Oh, a little bit. He's a little
or
bit
was that Ekblad's?
older.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm just curious about that one because 2013. I'm sorry, 2013.
2013.
Yeah, not even close to Matthews, but
Mm.
so you have McKinnon, so that's different, right?
Yeah,
And so if Bedard turns out to be McKinnon, then I think you're pretty comfortable with that if you're Chicago. But McKinnon, Barkov, 1-2. I mean,
yeah.
they have the same number of cups.
Yeah, and then Eichel and McDavid, one has a cup, one doesn't. I mean,
Well, I don't know if that's a comparison. I don't know if that's fair because
yeah,
McDavid
McDavid's
just has that much more skill. But
he's like the best player in the world, so it's kind
yeah,
of tough.
but maybe though McKinnon. I mean, McKinnon has that kind of skill too. But
Yeah,
anyway, I think if that's how it ended up, that the Sharks have ended up with Barkov and Chicago's ended up with McKinnon. I think both teams are pretty happy. So
yeah, we're both happy. I think I think Celebrini was just the perfect pick, the right man for the job, if that makes sense. Right, exactly what they needed. So that's the first check mark. The second is the other guys that are already playing for the Sharks around them, guys like
yeah,
Eklund, Zetterlund, and Smith around Celebrini, and
this.
just go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, I was to say that this may sound funny, but like I think that the chemistry that Celebrini and Smith have, just even the bromances and the friendships. I'm not saying that leads directly to wins, but I do think there is something to be said about you do battle harder for people you care about. I think so. I think there is something to be
Probably.
said about that. And I think another bit of it too is that it makes the losing sort of easier to stomach if you're going through these hard times with a friend, with a good friend. I don't know. I don't know this for sure, but I wonder about this. It is more me wondering, right? But if we talk about Chicago, right? Like I don't really know who is Bedard, like Bedard is slumping right now. Who is he talking to?
Hmm.
Who who in the and actually we're gonna get to this point next. Like who in the locker room kind of gets where he's coming from as like this franchise guy, but also too is a guy that you see as like your leader type. Obviously, they have Taylor Hall, who's won an MVP, right? But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if Taylor Hall is providing that kind of mentor. He should be, because otherwise, what else? Like, what's he doing there if he's not scoring, right? If he's getting healthy scratch, but I don't care about that as much, though. I'd say with the Chicago guys, and so I'm going to skip ahead actually to the next part of it in terms of what's
Sure.
going right. If you don't have anything to say about the sort
Other
of
than I love the Eklund Zetterlund bromance because they're two of the guys that they're not celebrating Smith, but they're important pieces to a
sure,
future top 6 or top 9 of the Sharks, and both young and you know they just seem like to be they've molded really well together. So I
yeah,
enjoy that
yeah, yeah. You
bromance.
have to think too that they really helped each other last year, because last year was so hard
Yeah,
for everybody, right? And so yeah,
yeah,
so to have somebody to kind of talk to lean on, to hang out with, and to kind of promise or commit to each other, hey, we're gonna right this ship. We're going to take the steps this summer, train, whatever, right? To push this in the right direction. And I think that's important. And I think that's Celebrini and Smith appear to have that kind of relationship too. And I'm not sure if that's something that the Sharks thought about when they're kind of putting guys together, but it's worked out.
yeah.
And maybe I don't know enough about Chicago, so someone can fill it in for me. But I asked around, and I didn't really hear anything like that with Chicago, which I'm not saying it's a damning thing or anything, but um, one thing that is damning though is, and this I have asked around about, and I've written about it a couple times recently, is that Granlund and Toffoli as your leaders, right, and your leaders, your sort of your locker room leaders, are also being among your most skilled players, is a really good thing. And I think that if Will Smith is having trouble with the center wing adjustment, who better to go to than Mikhail Granlund? Um,
Yep.
if Celebrini wants to talk about the pressure of coming as a high pick, well, Granlund's another good guy to talk to too, because Granlund had to deal with that when he came up with the Minnesota Wild, being this incredibly high prospect, not a number one guy like Celebrini, but he can relate to it a bit more. Whereas, again, I'm going to use Chicago as an example because that's what I asked around a lot about, and of course, Chicago is in the news a lot right now because of Taylor Hall getting scratched, Connor Bedard's slump, Luke Richardson kind of putting through the line blender, and obviously too that Bedard and Celebrini got drafted back to back years, number one. But I definitely do not hear that about Hall, about Teravainen, Bertuzzi. Not to say that they're bad guys or anything like that. And Teravainen is actually a guy that I advocated the Sharks to sign, but talking with people though, that the Sharks made the right move in terms of
Sure.
with Toffoli, at signing Toffoli than Teravainen. Not to say that Teravainen is bad in a room, but one guy is plus in a room,
Yeah.
and one guy is just fine in a room, maybe.
Yeah.
And so the Sharks signed a guy that's plus in the room, and I think that's really important. I think so. I think that's one thing that Sharks have done right in terms of their construction of the rebuild. And I want to add also to that, as much as it was maligned, that you see how guys like Goodrow and Delandria and Grunstrom and keeping Cunnin and Sturm, these guys are ultimately, yeah, they are ultimately placeholders for whenever Beasted figures it out, or Graf or Gushin or whatever, right? Ultimately. But they keep things close. They keep things competitive. Like that game in Pittsburgh when the Sharks were down 3-0. That's a game that they would not have been close in last year because they would have been down 6-0 in that game.
True.
And then, yeah, then they play a nice third period, but then they just cut the lead to like 6-2, and then you go home and you feel bad about yourself. But you keep things close, you give yourselves a chance, and then you get some bounces, and all of a sudden you're in overtime and you're feeling pretty good about yourself. So that's I think that's I think like a huge difference from last year.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm going to jump to something that, because I think it's related to it, and also make another
Well,
Chicago
real
comment
quick,
too.
I do want to also
Yes.
say I think the other thing that kind of gives the Sharks an off ice benefit is having guys like Jumbo and Patty around, where they were super high picks. They're obviously helping the young kids come along.
Right.
Whereas the most recent stars for the Blackhawks just retired, like, or they're still playing, right? Kane and Taves just
Right. Where
retired,
is
right?
Taves anyway? I don't even know where Taves is.
He retired, right? So,
Right. I know he
or
did,
he
but like,
like,
what is he doing though? Like,
I don't know.
why isn't Connor Bedard living with Jonathan Taves?
I don't know. Maybe he is. Maybe we're just dumb. I don't know. But I feel like also
I
guys
wouldn't
like
know that if he was
typically,
living with him.
yeah. But I feel like guys also take some years off. So I bet he's like, doing whatever
Yeah, I'm not
recently
blaming
retired
anybody,
guys
but
are.
yeah,
That's what I mean. Like the Patty and Jumbo had a couple of years where they've just been
sure.
kind of hanging around, doing whatever they want, and now they're like ready to come back and try and build up the team again. Whereas there's still the remnants of the past good Chicago teams there. So it kind of feels like he's got to start. Bedard has to start from the ground up, and you know. So
Yeah, I get, yeah, that's I think what I'm getting at. I get the sense that with Bedard that he doesn't have as much help around him in a way that Celebrini does. I guess in a way that's what it
yeah,
feels like to me, at least
yeah,
from my outside. We probably should have checked with a Blackhawks writer. We have a Chicago hockey now. Probably should checked with one of them about it, but it I get that feeling, and maybe somebody can correct me that I'm being totally teal tinted glasses,
Maybe.
bias, all that stuff. But I would say that it is clear though that Mike Greer did construct a plan to give Celebrini more support. I guess that's the way to put it, right? Signing to Foley, well, having Smith and Celebrini come out at the same time, same age, or not the same age, but both teenagers to kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of them becoming friends, that seemed like almost preordained, basically, right? From the time the Sharks won a draft lottery, and it so ends up that hey, they get along too, great. Their personalities mesh, great. But that seemed like the plan all along, having them live with Patrick Marleau and Joe Thornton. So there's like these very
Yeah.
clear kind of supports that Mike Greer, and what I wanted to add that somebody else credited, and I don't know how much impact he has had, but maybe he's had it is Ryan Clough. Um, but just that you have these two guys in Greer and Clough that have lived it, that have been in NHL rooms, that are longtime veteran guys, have seen how it works, and just how important it is to have that that sort of support around these young players. Whereas a scout said very pointedly, not sure that Kyle Davidson has that experience to reflect on because Kyle Davidson didn't play. I know this is a very Chicago Blackhawks kind of centric kind of theme. And so there's a lot of other rebuilds to learn from and to criticize and whatever out there, I know. And the Sharks haven't, obviously, not every step of the rebuild has been good too. Well, case in point last year. But I thought that was an interesting point though, that one thing that even people I talked to that are not sold on the Sharks rebuild in terms of just that is still very incomplete. And that's what we're going to get to in a second, that like as much as we're talking up the Sharks rebuild now, let's remind ourselves that we're far away. The Sharks are
a lot more.
far away from being any good. And there's still a lot of missteps that can happen from today beating Detroit, Macklin Celebrini's first ever overtime game winner, to a Stanley Cup. A lot can go wrong, and you don't get to that point of getting that Stanley Cup. But the people I talked to do agree though that this year's Sharks team is just seems way better designed than the Blackhawks. And I that's what I tend to agree. Like in again these areas that I mentioned, that there just seems to be just a more thought. This Sharks team is more thought out than
I think so. I think Greer took the beatings from last year to heart and was like, "Oh man, we need to really
right, and that's
team.
where like one of the scouts said he thought that Clough might be a big part of it. That just that extra voice. Obviously, Greer has lived it, but another guy that has lived a similar experience as Greer to kind of remind him that you don't trade Mikey Esimon for a 4th round pick.
Yeah, but he did. He also did. He didn't do the knee jerk. I need to sign these guys for $8 million or 8-year contracts or whatever, like, or 7-year contracts. Like he didn't do that either. He didn't pull the ripcord, which is it's a fine balance between like trying to hit the best free agents and then like the right free agents.
You're right. It does feel like the guys they signed were pretty carefully curated.
Yeah, Wenberg's a 2-year contract on a position of need. Great. It's expensive, but it's a good position.
Right.
2-year, low risk. Toffoli is like the guy that you want to build your team around because he likes being here. He likes the protection that he got with being here. Yeah, it's 4 years, but it's not that bad of a contract, and he's still a great player.
There's a risk there, but you understand why they gave him a little bit more and more money.
Yeah. But it's not 7. It's not. Yeah. So it's finding a balance, I think, and that's a really good job, I think, so far. And we're going to talk about where we could go wrong with that.
Right. Well, in a second. But yeah, and going back to last year, and I know that I say this many times, that people were very critical about Pierre McGuire. But the one thing that Pierre was right about when we talked with Pierre and Jimmy Murphy last year on our podcast was that last year's Sharks team really did lack just a common sense team building. We talked about all the guys that didn't even belong in NHL lineup, but even the style they play too. It just lacked sort of common sense design. But this year's Sharks team has, I think, a very common sense design. But I give Greer credit. As much as I've blasted Greer for last year's team, I give him credit for maybe last year was just the hard tank just to get Celebrini. And hey, he got him, so he got his man. So can't argue with that, right?
That's the Greg Wyshynski argument, right?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
He bottomed out when he needed to bottom out. So
He did. But a couple other things, and you had one thing that you've liked about this rebuild too. But obviously, Askarov, you have the goaltending position theoretically figured out for the next decade or so, and so that's a big part of it. And like we talked about, you traded good assets, but spare assets in the long run. Edstrom, a good prospect, but you have obviously great center prospects and a first round pick, the Vegas one. You have your own first round pick, so you traded spare parts to fill a position of need. And then finally, for me, and this is a question mark still, but I think that we've liked what we've seen from Ryan Warsofsky. And I think what I found interesting is just his willingness to do different things, to whether it's to get guys going, like having a 65-year-old goalie join Sharks practice, or it's playing the music during practice, or other things like walking, like going from one sheet to another, just so you can get fresh power when you do the power play drills to get fresh ice. So things like that they make sense, but they're creative, and so I think so far so good. I think with Warsofsky, I know some people haven't liked some of his lineup choices, but we've talked about that. Like they're just, I don't think there's a lot of options there for him, and I think he's doing a good job with that too.
I think his and his line building seems to be pretty good too. Like I like the way that he constructs his lines. He seems to have, at least we're kind of piecing together some, and putting our own like biases of what he's doing on it. But some of his lines make sense together, at least from what he can piece together based on what we have.
Right.
And then the other bit is I like his post games a lot. His post games are pretty detailed, and they're never like, oh, we suck again.
We've been lucky in that way. The Sharks last. I don't think Pete DeBoer was great after losses, if I remember correctly. So maybe Pete doesn't. Pete's great after wins. Pete is generally a really good guy, but after losses, not so good. But Bugner was great after losses. Sure. Quinn was great after losses, and Warsofsky has been good after losses too. And
but
these guys have dealt with a lot of losses. So.
Even the bright-eyed David Quinn at the end of it was losing the shine.
He looked defeated.
Like. So
there's no question about that. And he did look defeated. But if you look at a team that he had to play, I don't necessarily blame him. So
I do like that Warsofsky is pretty detailed with his post games. It feels like mentioned specific plays, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, and even the one that I criticized the most, Ferraro Ruda, I just don't know if they had a lot of choices at the moment, because at that moment when you start the season, I don't know if you feel great about. And Thrun, that's what we give Thrun credit for, that like even though he hasn't been consistent, he's had good games as basically a first pairing defenseman, which doesn't mean he is a number one defenseman in the league, but it means that that maybe if he gets some consistency, that he can find a regular role in the league. If he can do that for 20 minutes for one night, then there's definitely some promise. So I don't know if you had a lot of options there with Ferraro and Ruda. I don't know, maybe he stuck with them a little too long. I guess you can argue that, but like I've told you, I don't think Thompson was a valid option there, and so you kind of Benning wasn't Matt Benning wasn't a valid option there, because Matt, I don't think, is quite what he was a couple of years ago. So he just didn't have a lot of options there. So he just went with what he had, even if they were clear. And one thing I give him credit for is that, and I believe him when he said it, is that I asked him this, that at first Liljegren, when they traded for him, that they didn't put him with Ferraro, and people were like, oh, why didn't you do that, right? But you have to remember that Liljegren was coming from Toronto, and he only played one game in the first 13 or something like that. And so he still was basically almost in training camp.
Yeah, he's got to
And
get up to speed.
so, right. So it wasn't until Liljegren played, I think, his best game early on, then Vorskov's like, okay, you're ready to move up. And that was the design. That's what Warsawski said. That I think I asked him, and he said, yeah, we're hoping to get them together as soon as possible. And so even that, so maybe it was a couple games later than fans would have liked, but I think that, even like I said, I think the one that you can criticize the most, that for our Ruda pairing, there were reasons for that, or people didn't like Smith with Cunnin and Goodrow, but I think that made sense at that moment. You didn't have Celebrini was hurt, obviously, and also too, I think you needed some growth, and you needed Smith to play better too before you started to say, hey, you can have fun with your best buddy now, right? Like if you do that from game one, when Smith hasn't shown as much off puck play improvement and things like that, I don't know if you want to do that. That's not maybe the best thing for your team, and also maybe not the best example for Will Smith to learn from. If like from the beginning, he just gets to kind of free will a bit with Macklin. So,
Yeah.
So I think so far so good. I mean, it's only 20 games in, but again, even the first 10 games when they're losing, I thought that they were doing well, not more things right than wrong, or they have a better record, but or they might have. I'm not saying that they should have had a winning record in the first 10 games, but they were doing things a lot more things right than their record indicated.
My last bit was, I think the cap management has been
Yeah,
super
you always
good.
talk about this, and you're right.
I think just the way that he's constructed his current the rebuild. It's easy to give out big contracts, and it's easy to get bogged down with a tight cap by, just a lot of missteps that can happen in a rebuild, retaining a lot of money. And he hasn't. He's got these 3 years of Macklin and Smith on an ELC, and then after that ELC expires, Erik Karlsson's retained salary is gone. Brent Burns' retained salary is gone. Marc-Edouard Vlasic's contract is gone. Logan Couture's contract is technically gone if Logan Couture plays hockey again. Yeah, it's like it's a really good, it's a clean rebuild in terms of the cap sheet. And I've been, like you mentioned, I've been harping on it for a bit, but that can really, it used to matter a lot more when the cap wasn't rising a lot, but it really hamstrung a lot of teams when they were trying to rebuild during the COVID era. So.
Yeah, and I've been critical. I was looking back at what I said about the Karlsson trade and Erik Karlsson trade, and the Sharks should have retained more. But hey,
yeah,
it's that balance, that it's work though, that you do end up with flush with this cap space, and you can do something with it or not. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but that I think that almost every big contract, you have to give Mike credit that pretty much every big contract, and some of it he had some luck, like Evander Kane. Like I don't really give Mike credit for getting rid of that clean, getting away scot free from that one. That just was Evander Kane maybe doing that to himself more than anything. But
yeah,
Erik Karlsson, Tomas Hertl, the sort of the returns. The only one that you can still look back on is Brent Burns, and got the wrong guys from Carolina. Maybe you could have that's the one that kind of
in some roundabout
you get
way,
that perfunctory third round picks. Like, who needs a third round pick?
In some roundabout way, didn't Stephen Lawrence become Anthony Duclair, who became Jack Thompson?
How good is
I'm just joking.
Thompson to be honest in end though, right? And so we'll see with Jack. So.
It's at least he's still around, I guess. It's something.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But I think that, I mean, Burns is still playing at a pretty decent level, and he has for years. I mean, you really should have got more from Burns, I think, in the end, because at the time I was like, well, he wanted out and whatnot, and a lot of people said, like, hey, if a guy wants out, like, make him wait a little bit so you can get more. So make Brent grit and bare his teeth for like 20, 30, 40 games, and play well and play his way out of San Jose like Karlsson did. There's an argument for that, at least. Certainly, though, the return was light on Burns compared to at least with Carlson, it's one acid, and who knows what Sam Dickinson will be, or the fourth. It was supposed to be the 14th pick, so whoever the 14th pick will be, who knows what they'll be. But the value was there. You got this high end acid back. Same thing with Tomas Shirley. You got Edstrom and a first round pick back, and then you flip that to Askarov. So regardless, you get a high end asset back. Whereas with Burns, you didn't get that one asset back. Even at the time, it looked kind of like, oh, you got a guy that's a pretty good fourth liner in Steven Lawrence. You got a talented but injury prone goalie prospect in Makiniemi. And then you got the third round pick, which I think
$20 bill.
yeah, the $20 bill. And so, and I know Burns had trade protections too, so you couldn't just trade him anywhere, but
Yeah.
yeah, something more premium. I think would have been nice, but otherwise, so like I said, yeah, Mike has done the balance well, and the Meyer trade, even though that wasn't so much of a cap dump, but that trade still looks pretty good on paper. Obviously, we're still waiting to see on Muka Madulin and Quentin Musty, and what Zetterlund will ultimately become. But that looks like a pretty good deal too for the Sharks. And so, by and large, yeah, the cap management part, which you've always from the beginning have been very you give Mike a lot of credit for that, and I've been a little more again that maybe the Sharks should have retained to get something more back. But as I always and my spiel about this, it's not my money, it's
It's
Hassel's money.
Hassel's money.
so
That's a big part of it too. I
yeah.
imagine I don't remember who it was, but it was saying that there's probably a mandate for maybe some cost-cutting measures in this rebuild as well, from a Hasso
Well,
perspective,
I would guess that if
with attendance
it
and everything.
we have heard throughout that it was never on the table to say retain half on Carlson. That's been consistent, right? Unless one of the insiders is wrong, or what I've heard too. I've never heard anything to contradict that somehow Mike had some offer on the table where he retains 50% and he gets like a first and I don't know what else on top of that. And he would have got more, of course, but I don't know if he would have got like 3 first or anything like that anyway, because that's just not how things work. Like I know the value of retaining all that is maybe 3 first, but teams aren't going to give you 3 first. They're not going to blow up their future like that just so they can save a couple million on the cap. But consistently, it does seem like it does seem like there wasn't really that option anyway for him. And so in that scenario, then in sort of the trying to retain less but get out of these contracts and get something premium back. I think after the Brett Burns, like you said, like maybe the focus changed. Maybe with Brent, it was just like, let's get him out the door. He wants out the door. He's been a great Shark. It doesn't matter what we get back. He wants to go to Carolina. Great. This is what we like from them. Just go.
Done.
Take
Yeah.
it and run, right? That there's been a little more maybe care or a little more like, okay, we got to get a premium asset. I think the hurdle trade doesn't happen unless they get a great offer. And so they held on to him. Tommy played great. He was an all-star and they got a great offer finally, or at least a good offer, maybe not a great offer. And even with Carlson, they got something that they could take back, and they also ended up with Kyle Granlund in the bargain too. So
Yep.
yeah.
So these are the things that I think you're right that have gone really well for the Sharks. And this is only hitting on basically our current roster plus Askarov. We're not even really talking about all of the other prospects, just because it's more speculative when we start bringing in guys like Musty and all of the other prospects that we've acquired throughout this rebuild until they're here and actually doing something. But just from the who's on the Sharks right now perspective, been going really well, I think. So obviously, what are some pitfalls? What are the biggest question marks, I think?
Well, it's defense. I think that's really unresolved. I know a lot of fans love Cagnoni, and they see what Sam Dickinson's having a great season in London, but there's still very huge question marks. I will say, since I've shit on Chicago a lot
Yeah.
in this podcast, that Lashunov, Vlasic, Korchinski is still a lot better looking. It's still not sure about any of these guys. And I did get a lot of feedback from my sources about what the hell is Chicago doing with Korchinski, starting him in the NHL and then dumping him back in the AHL this year. Just kind of, I don't know if they handled him right, but
Yeah.
in terms of just the talent level, right, of these guys, that these guys might be a 1, 2, and 3, ideal in the future, or close to it, 2, 3, or 4, or something like that, right? Whereas the Sharks don't have anything surefire in that 1, 2, and 3 category at the moment,
For sure.
and so not that, of course, Chicago's not surefire either, but just Chicago is definitely more promising there, though. I think any objective observer can tell you that the Blackhawks prospect pool on defense is way stronger than San Jose's. So I think that's a huge question mark of how the Sharks will address that. And also too, that we've seen this year that Will Smith has shown a lot of flashes of talent, but we still need to see, is he going to take that next leap? Is he going to, we see the flashes of elite ability, but is he going to be able to put it together on a regular basis? So I think those are some of the questions that immediate questions that I'm looking at. But I feel pretty good about Will doing that. I've always been a Will Smith fan, so it's more about the defense because
Yep.
we
What are
we
we gonna
don't
do?
know. Mokumadulin's a good prospect too, but we need to see him do it. And he's a 2020 pick, so it's obviously time for him to deliver. And Dickinson, Mukumadulin, and then you have some question marks like Cagnoni, Polkamp, good prospects, but
Yeah.
huge question marks. So yeah, I think for me that's the biggest sort of, not say that's what's going wrong with the rebuild, but that hasn't gone right yet.
Yeah, I think
And
they
yeah,
started
let's put it
with
that way.
they started with the Dickinson thing.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
they
yeah.
knew.
Or even acquiring Mukumadulin, right, was a start for that.
Yeah, they recognized that it was pretty paper thin. Like we
Yeah.
were looking at Merkley and Gannon LaRock as our best prospects.
Right.
And
I
then
gotta look at too, just to drink some tea on this too. What Alex Holtz's stats are,
ooh,
because
I cannot imagine.
that's one that I definitely was like,
He got traded
get
to Vegas, right?
Mukmadul and don't get Holtz.
He got traded to Vegas, right?
Yeah,
Is he with Vegas or is he with Henderson?
I think he's with Vegas, but
He is. 7 points in 18 games. Not bad.
okay, so yeah,
Not bad, but yeah.
he's a scorer first though. He's a guy that needs to be closer to, yeah, point per game, not quite point per game, but you know what I mean though. He's got to be doing a lot more offensively for him to justify. So
Yeah, so the Sharks need to improve. But I mean, luckily there is less positions to fill out on defense, right? Like it's important to get
yeah,
the
but it's the
one.
hardest thing to fill out though.
Yeah, it's important to get the 1-2, but yeah, that's they'll figure it out.
I don't know. It's hard. It's really hard. Like I said, that's the goaltending is almost easier to figure out because it's just one guy. Like I said, it's literally just one guy. But defense, so you got to fill out at least 4 guys that are pretty good. And I think we talked about this the last podcast, that the hardest thing to kind of put together a lot of times is to find a good puck mover who's also a valid defender.
Yep.
And that's really hard to find. And so
Sam
it's not a
Dickinson,
given. Hopefully, right?
Hopefully.
But it's just not a given. Is what I'm saying, that you can just sign that. You can be like, hey, we're set up front with Celebrini and Smith and Eklund, and we got Askarov looking good there, and we're just gonna sign defensemen. Like
it's hard.
It's hard. Yeah, I don't think it's that simple. Whereas if your defense is really strong, then you could be like, hey, we just need a Aiden Hill. We just need a guy who's decent and we can support him, right? I guess that's the point. So
I think that comes up to our last topic, which is where do you go from here and how do you turn it into a contender using the space that we're gonna possibly have,
right?
Because right now the cap is what, 88 million, 87 and a half, I don't remember what it is. It's supposedly going to go up at least to 92.5, but maybe as high as like 97 million next year based off of increased revenues and such from the league, which is awesome from a fan perspective because, more money for more big contracts and more movement and stuff like that. But things could go wrong, right? Like this could be the summer where we go we finish 500 on the year, say some miracle, we finish like with 73 points, and Greer is like, okay, we're gonna try and push for something, and then he signs a bunch of dudes that may hamstring the Sharks when they need to re-sign, like Macklin and Smith and stuff. So I don't know. I think there could be a potential for an improved Sharks team, but also a lot of wariness I have, I guess, of
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
sign
No,
big
I
contracts.
agree with you. Scout told me when we were talking about all this that, and we're talking about all the rebuilds that have failed. Detroit, he's the one that said about Yzerman that, yeah, that dude would be canned if he wasn't Steve Yzerman. Hockey decides when a team is ready to start winning. Management doesn't. And I think that we do see that teams they take that step maybe too soon.
Yeah.
Like maybe Detroit, maybe they went too fast, like acquiring like a the Brinket, for example, right?
Yeah.
A big investment guy. Like signing a guy like Patrick Kane's different because that's a low investment. So if you get him to sign, great. And if he's not any good or if he slows down, he's not gonna be a anchor on you. But like you make that big trade for Alex the Brinket, and actually I wonder if unfortunately Alex has had the bad luck of being a part of two of these things, and I wonder if that's something to look at. Ottawa and Detroit, those teams that maybe thought they were a bit more ready than they actually were.
True.
And so they paid a lot to get this guy too. So yeah, I think there's definitely something to watch for that. Signing guys like again Patrick Kane. I think if we're going to talk about Ottawa, and we'll dig deeper into this, but even a guy like Claude Giroux, right? It's not a huge investment. So if if he's good but a team isn't, or if they're both bad or whatever, like it's okay. You can stomach it. So I'm not gonna micro focus on every decision that these teams have made, but
Sure.
it's these big swings though that you really got to be sure about for sure when you're sending out multiple picks or high picks, right? Because you think you're ready to take that step, and I don't think the Sharks team is close to that.
Yep.
I think
No.
that the only thing maybe that you might be like, okay, we need this and it's worth sinking, investing a lot in, could be a number one defenseman of the right age,
Yep.
right? So, and maybe even on the slightly older side, just for experience, but not too old, like late 20s or something like that. But if it's I don't even know who's out there for that. But I'm just saying that that's the only guy that I can kind of think of. I wouldn't do it for any other position because every other position you have enough kind of hope and the right ages more or less, Askarov and Celebrini and whatnot. So
Yeah.
yeah,
You're those teams are still in the bottom of this league standing, and like we're almost to Thanksgiving,
right.
which
Isn't
is
that
like
crazy?
the
Yeah,
but like Ottawa, Buffalo, Columbus, Detroit, Montreal, San Jose, Chicago, we're all in the bottom 10 teams,
yeah.
right?
Like the bigger swing. I'm trying to think of other ones like Ottawa trading for Chikrin. I think they traded a decent amount, not like as
Yeah, it
much
was like a
as for
first and a second,
DeBrincat,
I think,
but
maybe.
yeah, they traded a decent amount for a guy like that to take that swing. Trying to think of Detroit, any big ones for them besides the Brinket, obviously, but
Um, I, they signed like Andrew Kopp, I think, but that doesn't really count. He's just like a, but they signed him for a while.
yeah, they signed him for a little while and he hasn't quite worked out. Yeah, so um,
I just think the
yeah,
issue is just they more were, it's the JDism. That's it's the creamy middle. It's they're good enough to be okay, but not good enough to make the playoffs, and
well,
not.
but that's the thing. They're clearly thinking that they're going to be better, but then you kind of just misjudge your assets, and then you end up in the middle,
Yep.
right? Because I don't think it was Ottawa's plan to be
Middle team.
a 20th place team. I don't think it's Detroit's plan to be last year, right? They were like a 17th place team. I don't think Patrick Kane signed there because he thought like, oh yeah, this is great. I'm gonna be a wild card team. I'll just make it the playoffs on the last day. Yeah, I'm gonna sign Detroit. There must be something that the management or even other players like a Kane who had kind of his choice of where to go. They're looking at and they think, oh, there's something that's going to take off here, and it doesn't. and we don't know exactly why, right? In these cases, since we don't follow those teams,
Yep.
but you just I think the thing we can agree on, if we can't necessarily diagnose the source of all of it, is that you don't want to be there if you're the Sharks. So
Yeah.
you don't want to overinvest in, say, an Andrew Kopp, and he's not who you thought he was, and you're stuck paying him for years, or make a big trade for a scoring winger like a DeBrincat when
Yeah.
that's not what you need. And even if they do make a big swing for defense, which I understand, like that is obviously rife with a lot of issues and concerns too, because you just have to be sure you pick the right guy. And of course, that's when you pick I will say though, like this risk taking, like teams take these risks and a lot of times, more times than not, they blow up. They don't work out for you, right? But when they do, it can work beautifully. And I think great example of that, actually, I just thought of this right now, is Boston when they signed Zdeno Chara.
Sure.
And if I recall that Boston team, I gotta look this up, but I don't think that Boston team was really good when they signed him. They had no
I can't
business,
remember.
in my recollection, sinking
Mhm.
that kind of money into an older defenseman. I mean, I'm just curious about this because so they signed him when Chara was 29,
Mhm.
and the previous year, that's actually when they traded Joe Thornton to San Jose. The previous year, they were out of the playoffs.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
first year with Chara, they were out of the playoffs. So then I'm sure a lot of people are like, "Oh my God, Chara's good, but what are you guys
Sure.
doing?" And then the next year, Claude Julien takes over, and they make the playoffs. And then eventually, they build toward a Stanley Cup within 3 years. So yeah. So that's an interesting one to think about, because I bet if the Sharks signed a Chara and they're not that good the next year, that you and I are going to be like, "Oh my God, what a mistake," and then it works out. So I think that's a good reminder. But anyway,
Need the right guys, and
yeah,
there are many ways to build a team. I think as well. Like Vegas proves it every year that they find a way to get the guys that they need in certain positions. So I think it's possible. Obviously, Vegas is one of the better trading teams in the NHL and signing teams and all sorts of things in terms of they recognize what they need and they're very good at finding it. But it's not. The answer may not be throw out all the money in free agency. Hopefully,
no, of course not. But like I said, with the Boston example with Chara, sometimes it is
sometimes it
if
is.
you got
Yeah.
the right guy. And I think one thing that we can kind of maybe to tie it all up is that the Sharks need a number one defenseman
They do.
right, whether it comes from their system or they sign or trade for that guy. I think in Peter Angelo and Chara's case, they're both free agents, and I think they're both. I think Peter Angelo was actually past 30, and Chara, like I said, was 29 in his first year in Boston. That there
But
probably
those are
some
the
people
right
are like,
guys.
those are right guys, but some people are like, oh, they might be a little bit too old, right? But I think both Vegas and Boston were obviously proven right. Obviously, especially Boston, because Chara, his longevity was ridiculous.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
yeah, I think though that they need a guy like that though. I
Yeah.
guess that's for sure. So I guess ultimately, I guess what I'm saying is that the Sharks do take that kind of swing this summer with all this cap space, that it would make sense that that'll be the position that they look at. If they look into other positions, it wouldn't make that much sense to me.
Yeah, Vegas is. I'm just looking at Vegas's cap sheet. Like, just their top four is insane. Like Petrangelo, Hannafin, Theodore, and McNabb as your top four is just stupidly good.
Hmm.
I mean, McNabb's the weakest one, but he's one of the better defensive stalwarts in the
Yeah,
NHL.
yeah.
And then beneath that, they have got like Korczak, Hutton, Haig, White Cloud, just decent third liners. So or third
I
pairing
think that's how
guys.
they've been able to support, because I didn't really like their forward signings this past off season when they let Marchessault and
Sure.
Stevenson go. But I think it helps when you have that rock solid defense that you can kind of introduce random forwards into
Yeah.
your
Right.
lineup. You're more likely to. Like if you're the Sharks and you're trying to introduce Will Smith into your lineup, it's way easier if you're doing it if your top four is Peter Angelo and Hannafin and all the guys that you mentioned there.
Yeah.
So Yeah.
How far the Sharks have to go, because those guys are, those are like your classic 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of guys, and the Sharks really need to hit that. So it's kind of
The
the
hardest
bow
thing
on it.
I think you said his hardest thing might have been to get that centerpiece guy, that 1C. The Sharks looked like they did in Celebrini, but then past that is probably the defense, and
Yeah.
just putting together a playoff caliber defense is going to be hard.
Yep, for sure. All right, y'all. We've talked a lot this week. We will
Mm-hmm.
be back next week after the Sharks win like 4 games in a row.
After the Sharks get to 500.
Yeah, right. They're gonna get to 500, and then we'll come back. But yep. Hope y'all have a good week. Anything else, Sheng?
I'm all good.
All right, y'all. Bye.
Bye.